I want you to picture a scene. It feels like the opening of some high-stakes political thriller.
Okay.
You have the leader of a G20 nation. He walks onto this wild, rugged beach. The surf is just crashing. The wind is howling. He wades into the water, dives under a wave, and that's it.
He's gone.
He's gone. Cut to black. Nobody is ever found. No weapon, no note, just a pile of clothes left on the sand.
It sounds like fiction, doesn't it? Like something from a spy novel or, a locked room mystery. But this is actually historical fact.
It is. And today we're doing a deep dive into what is, well, perhaps the greatest unsolved mystery in Australian history.
Well, for sure.
We are talking about the disappearance of Harold Holt, the 17th Prime Minister of Australia. It's December 1967. And this isn't just a political story. This is a true crime story where the suspect might be the ocean itself.
Or maybe Chinese spies or the CIA.
Or a man who simply wanted to vanish.
Exactly.
So we have a lot of ground to cover. We've got police files, we have these wild conspiracy theories, and we have the marine biology of one of the most dangerous stretches of water on Earth.
So our mission today is to sift through all that noise.
And figure out, how does Prime Minister just disappear off the face of the Earth?
To understand the how, I think you really have to understand the who. Because when you look at the profile of Harold Holt, he wasn't your typical suit and tie leader.
No, not at all. The sources paint this picture of a guy who was almost aggressively cool for the 1960s.
He really was. You have to compare him to his predecessor, Robert Menzies. Menzies was the old guard, very formal, very, stiff.
Very British.
Very British. Holt takes over, and he's the first modern prime minister. He projected this image of youth and vitality, stylish, charming, but most important for our case today, he was a massive risk taker.
There's a biography by Ross Walker that we looked at, and he explicitly notes that Holt had a habit of placing himself in harm's way. This wasn't a guy who played, safe rounds of golf.
Not at all. His obsession was the ocean, and not just swimming spearfishing.
And he was a purist about it.
A total purist. He practiced skin diving, which means he refused to use oxygen tanks. He thought tanks were inauthentic. He wanted to rely solely on his own lung power.
That says so much about his psychology, doesn't it? Always testing his limits.
It really does.
Yeah.
And that attitude, it led into his approach to security. This is the part that just blows the minds of modern listeners.
Oh, yeah.
He effectively refused a security detail.
It's insane to think about now.
He saw it as an invasion of privacy. I mean, he grudgingly accepted a bodyguard for official duties, but when he was on holiday, absolutely not. He just wanted to be a normal guy.
But there's a darker side to this whole vitality image. By late 1967, the reality didn't quite match the picture, did it?
No, and this is where you start to see the cracks.
Yeah.
Physically, he was crumbling. He was taking strong painkillers for a shoulder injury.
A recurring one, too.
Yeah, and he was exhausted from the stress of the job. His doctor had explicitly told him, swim less, play less tennis, you have to slow down.
And he didn't listen. In fact, there was a massive red flag, a real foreshadowing event, just months before he disappeared.
It's so chilling to look back on. In May 1967, he was diving at Cheviot Beach.
The exact same spot.
The exact same spot where he would later vanish. He got into serious trouble, turned purple, started vomiting seawater, and his friends had to physically haul him onto the rocks.
And most people would take that as a sign to, I don't know, maybe find a new hobby.
You would think. But Holt reportedly just laughed it off. He said, that's the closest I have ever been to drowning in my life. It shows this level of overconfidence that, borders on denial.
He thought he was invincible in the water.
He really did.
So we have our victim, a risk-taking, exhausted leader on painkillers who hates security and ignores medical advice. Now let's set the scene for the incident itself. Sunday, December 17th, 1967.
It's a sweltering summer day in Victoria. Holt is at his holiday home in Portsea, and the atmosphere is almost disarmingly normal.
Right.
The Prime Minister is driving his own car, a maroon Pontiac Parisienne.
A very distinct car.
Very. And he's just running errands. He stops for groceries. He buys insect repellent and a bag of peanuts. There are no black SUVs, no earpieces, just a guy buying peanuts.
And who is he with? Because this adds a little bit of intrigue to the timeline.
He's with Marjorie Gillespie. She was his neighbor, but the sources are pretty clear. She was also his lover. His wife, Zara, was back in the capital.
Right, back in Canberra.
So Holt is with Marjorie, her daughter, and 2 others. They decide to head to Cheviot Beach to watch a yachtsman sail past.
Now, Cheviot Beach is not a place you go for a casual dip.
Far from it. This faces the Bass Strait, which is notoriously one of the wildest stretches of water on the planet. The beach is rocky, the water's full of dense kelp, and the currents are violent.
And on this particular day,
The surf was high and the tide was fierce.
the other people in the group recognized that danger.
Oh, immediately. They looked at the water and basically said, no thanks. One of the guys waded in knee-deep, felt the undertow, and just backed right off.
But Holt, he goes in.
He goes in,
No.
just wearing sand shoes and swimming trunks. He swims out into the deeper water, and this is the moment where the mystery begins.
What did the witnesses see?
They said he moved further out,
Yeah.
and the water around him was just boiling with turbulence.
And then
Silence. He didn't raise his arms. He didn't scream for help. He didn't splash around in panic.
nothing.
Nothing. Marjorie Gillespie gave this haunting description later. She said, it was like a leaf being taken out. So quick and final.
1 minute, he's the most powerful man in the country, swimming just a few yards away. The next minute, he's just gone.
Exactly. And that is when the panic sets in.
I can only imagine the frantic search that must have followed.
It was chaos. It became one of the largest search operations in Australian history. You had over 340 personnel on that beach. Helicopters, police divers, the Navy, the Army.
And they found nothing.
Nothing. Not a single trace. No body, no piece of clothing, no sign he had ever been there.
And this creates what we call the vacuum. When you have a huge event, a world leader vanishing, and zero physical evidence, the human mind just struggles to accept it.
We need a plot. We need a reason.
Precisely. And because of the era of the Cold War, the Vietnam War, the public imagination just went wild. The conspiracy theories started almost immediately.
They really did.
Let's dive into those theories, because they turn this story from a tragedy into a full-blown espionage thriller. And the biggest one, the one that's stuck for decades, involves a submarine.
The Chinese submarine theory. This is the heavy hitter. It was popularized by a book called The Prime Minister Was a Spy.
Which is not a subtle title.
Not at all. The theory claims that Harold Holt hadn't drowned. The claim was he'd been a sleeper agent for the Chinese government since 1929.
Since he was a student.
Right. And that on that Sunday at Cheviot Beach, he wasn't going for a swim. He was going to a rendezvous.
Okay, so paint the picture for us. How does this supposedly go down?
The theory is that Chinese frogmen divers were waiting for him in the surf. Holt swims out, gives a signal, they grab him, maybe give him an oxygen mask, and drag him underwater to a waiting submarine.
Just off the coast?
Just off the coast.
Oh.
Then they whisk him away to Beijing, where he allegedly lived out the rest of his life in a villa. It sounds incredibly cinematic.
It does. And it plays on the fact that nobody was found. If he's not on the beach, he must be somewhere else, right?
But China wasn't the only suspect. We have to talk about the CIA connection.
Right. This one is darker. You have to remember the context. 1967. The Vietnam War is raging. Holt was a very close ally of President Lyndon B. Johnson. He famously said, all the way with LBJ.
But the rumor was that Holt was having second thoughts.
Exactly. The theory suggests that Holt was privately planning to pull Australian troops out of Vietnam. The CIA supposedly got wind of this.
So to prevent a major policy shift, they removed him.
So an assassination in the surf.
Or a staged disappearance. It taps into that deep paranoia of the late 60s that intelligence agencies were the puppet masters.
And then there's the third angle, the one that's less about spies and more about personal despair. Suicide.
This one gained traction because of Holt's state of mind. He was exhausted. His private life was complicated. The government was facing some political headwinds.
So he just swam out and didn't come back.
That was the idea. And there was even a romantic version of this, that he faked his death to run away with a lover to the French Riviera.
Okay, so we have a Chinese submarine, a CIA hit squad, and a faked death. These are the plots we want to believe, but now let's bring it back to reality. When you strip away the spy novels and look at the facts, what actually holds up?
Well, let's start with the submarine theory. It falls apart the moment you look at a depth chart.
Yeah.
Cheviot Beach is rugged. The water is full of jagged reefs and shallow rock shelves. A submarine large enough to travel from China would have run aground. It couldn't just park in the surf zone.
It's just not practical.
Not at all. And the idea of frogmen operating in that boiling turbulence, dragging a man underwater without anyone seeing, logistically, it's, virtually impossible.
Plus, there's the quote from his wife, Zara Holt. I think this is the best rebuttal in the history of conspiracy theories.
It is perfect. When she was asked about the Chinese spy theory, she just dismissed it. She said he didn't even like Chinese food.
That brings it back down to earth so fast.
It really does. And as for the CIA theory, historians have combed through the files for decades. There is just no documentation, no whistleblowers, nothing to suggest Holt was actually going to pull out of Vietnam.
The motive just isn't there.
It's not. So if there wasn't spies, was it suicide?
What do the sources say?
His friends vehemently disputed that. Malcolm Fraser, who would later become prime minister, insisted Holt was making active plans for the future, for 1968. He just wasn't showing the signs.
So we are left with the Occam's razor conclusion, the simplest explanation.
The tragedy of a man and the sea. Look at the physical reality again. You have a 59-year-old man with a bad shoulder, on painkillers, physically exhausted, entering one of the most dangerous rip currents in the world.
The rip at Port Phillip Heads is famous for a reason.
It's a funnel. The tide runs incredibly fast there. If you get caught in that, especially with a bum shoulder that limits your swimming, you are helpless.
But the body, that's the sticking point for me, and I'm sure for you listening.
Yeah.
If he drowned, why didn't he wash up?
Because the ocean is efficient. The tides there are powerful enough to take a body miles out to sea very quickly. But there's also a grimmer biological reality.
Oh.
The coroner's report and marine experts point out that sea lice and crayfish in that area are voracious.
That is a terrifying thought.
It's not pleasant, but a body can be reduced significantly in 24 to 48 hours. And then, of course, there are the sharks. Great whites are common in that area.
So the lack of a body isn't actually a mystery.
It's just nature doing what nature does.
And it took almost 40 years for the legal system to catch up to that reality.
It did. In 2005, the coroner finally ruled it an accidental drowning. He said that Holt took an unnecessary risk.
Unnecessary risk. That phrase really brings it full circle, doesn't it? The risk taker finally took one risk too many.
Exactly. It wasn't a conspiracy. It was a character flaw.
Now, before we close the case file, we have to talk about the legacy. Because Australia has a very unique way of dealing with this trauma.
It is one of the supreme ironies of Australian history. They named a swimming pool after him.
The Harold Holt Memorial Swimming Center.
It sounds like a dark joke, but it's real.
And it entered the slang, too.
Yeah. To do a Harold Holt means to bolt, to leave quickly or disappear. It's embedded in the language now.
It really marked the end of an era.
The end of innocence. Before this, a prime minister could be just a guy driving a Pontiac. After this, the walls went up. Security, media scrutiny. A leader can never just vanish again.
It's fascinating that despite the coroner's ruling, the mystery still persists.
Because a disappearance is always more powerful than a death. A death is a period. A disappearance is a question mark. It invites us to write the ending.
And we'd rather write a spy thriller than a tragedy about a bad current.
We always want the submarine.
I want to leave you with one final image. 5 days after Harold Holt vanished, they held a memorial service in Melbourne. The world descended on the city. You had Prince Charles, you had President Johnson.
A massive global moment of mourning.
Exactly. But the center of it was empty. There was no puffin, all that pomp, all that power focused on nothing. An empty space.
It's a haunting image.
If you have a moment after this, look up a photo of Cheviot Beach on a rough day. Look at that crushing white water.
Yep.
And ask yourself, knowing what you know now, would you get in?
I know I wouldn't.
That's it for this deep dive into the disappearance of Harold Holt. Thanks for listening.